Thank you so much. Hello, Google. Afternoon. I'm so happy to be here. It is my 4th visit, I think, as you said. First time in New York City for Google, and just trying to figure out how many Google locations there are. You helped me before. I think you said there's 70 locations in 40 countries.
That's according to Google.
According to Google. I mean, it's a verifiable, a good source. So after I finished going to every country in the world, I was like, maybe I need a new quest, and maybe now I'll try to go to every Google office. Did San Francisco, Mountain View, Dublin, now here, but super excited to be here. Would love to share a few stories with you. I'll give you 4 tips, 4 actionable things that you can do right away, tonight, tomorrow, to make real improvements in your life and work. And then we'll have a conversation. Love to have some questions and attempted answers. And we will hang out. So everything I do is focused more or less around this topic of how to find the work you were born to do. How to find that thing that makes you come alive. That thing you can kind of lose yourself in, but is also sustainable. Something you enjoy, something that is financially viable, and something that you're really good at. And I'll talk about that as we go along. But first, I have a question for some of you. Do you remember when you were 6 years old and some adult, maybe a friend of your parents, random stranger, teacher, ask you this question: what do you want to be when you grow up? How many of you remember your answer to that? Raise your hand. Andrew, what was your answer?
I wanted to be a pilot.
Wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah.
Did you grow up to become a pilot?
No.
No. What was your answer?
Same.
Same. Also pilot. 2 pilots in the front row. That's awesome. What was your answer?
Wanted to be rich.
You wanted to be rich. Okay. That's great.
Firefighter.
Firefighter. Okay.
I fight different kinds of fires.
You fight different kinds of fires.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really
Anybody else? Yeah, over there?
Psychologist.
Psychologist. Why did you want to be a psychologist when you were 6?
Because I like to read people's minds.
Oh, okay. You like to read people's minds. A couple of other people. Raise your hand if you want. Yeah, all the way in the back? A pilot. Okay. This is a high pilot audience here at Google, which I suppose makes sense. And maybe one more person. Is there anyone who wanted to do something totally wild and crazy? You had your hand up and you put it down.
I wanted to be a fashion designer.
That's cool. Did you grow up to become? Did you grow up to become a wild and crazy fashion designer? And then lastly, you had your hand raised as well, I think?
I wanted to be the president.
You wanted to be the president. All right, well, there's still time.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question. Who here is doing exactly what they imagined when they were 6 years old? Is there anyone? You kind of have your hand like halfway up. Did you become a psychologist?
No, but I still read people's minds.
You still read people's minds. Okay. And are you rich yet? No, you're still working on it? Okay, awesome. So the interesting thing, the curious thing, is that most of us actually do not know when we're 6 years old, like what we're going to be when we grow up. Hello, everyone. Good to see you guys. This is my team from Crown Random House, big part of making the book happen, so thank you guys for coming. And just a little bit briefly about my journey. When I was 6, I had twin aspirations. There were 2 things that I wanted to do. Did anyone want to be an astronaut? People usually say that. Everybody here wanted to be a pilot. We had 3 people here who said they wanted to be a pilot when they were 6 years old. So my dad worked for NASA. And when I was 6 years old, he took me to his office. And there was a space shuttle launch happening. And he gave me a task. He gave me an assignment. And now, kind of looking back, I can see it was a fake assignment, like a manufactured kind of thing. But at the age of 6, I thought I was, single-handedly responsible for the safety and success of the space shuttle launch. And so I completed my task with diligence. Everything was good with the launch. And then we went to my favorite restaurant, which was Burger King. So when I was 6 years old, Burger King was like the greatest place in the world. And if it was my birthday, or if I had just saved the world, sent the shuttle into space successfully, or if it was Monday or Tuesday or pretty much any other day, I would always want to go to Burger King. And so when people ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up, Chris? I would either say, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to work at Burger King. Right? And the thing is, I didn't really know the difference at the age of 6. Right? At the age of 6, it was just like, these are two cool places. These are like 2 really cool things. And I didn't understand, like, okay, there's actually a lot of differences here in terms of what that career track is like and advancement potential and compensation and lots of other things. I just knew it was like, here are these two interesting things, right? And so I grew up, and I wasn't smart enough to work for NASA, or Google, I should say. But at a certain point, I realized that a career in fast food probably wasn't the best choice for me either. And so I did a lot of different things. I started a series of small businesses. I always worked for myself, mostly because I wasn't that good at working for other people. I was very motivated in doing something that I believed in, but it was kind of hard for me to do something that wasn't my vision or my idea. And started traveling at a certain point. I lived in Sierra Leone and Liberia for about 4 years as an aid worker after a civil war there, and started going to lots of other countries. And then, as you heard, eventually started this travel quest of going to every country in the world, which was about a 10 or 11-year journey. At a certain point, I started writing about it on the blog, The Art of Nonconformity, then eventually the books. And as part of this whole process, it wasn't really strategic. It was just much more of an organic thing. But as part of this process, everything I do now, one way or another, is kind of focused on this aspect of community building. And when I say community building, it's not so much a top-down kind of thing. It's not so much about me giving people tools and resources as it is about bringing like-minded people together, forging connections, and kind of seeing how we can support one another. So I'm really interested in this convergence between a big dream, like following a big dream or a passion of your own, like mine was to go to every country in the world, and also contributing something, some act of service. So I like to kind of bring people together and support them in their quest as well. So this was kind of a long and winding road. It wasn't a strategy. And your journey was probably different from mine, but you too had to make choices. And you too had to make decisions. And many of you are probably still making decisions at different times. And we kind of go through life and we navigate this process with limited information. So we don't actually know what everything is going to be like. We have to make these decisions that are going to kind of set things in motion for several years or even longer. And we often make these decisions under what I call a haze of uncertainty. So it's like, well, I think I know what it's like to do this, and maybe I'm good at this. Maybe I took a skills test, or maybe my guidance counselor suggested this to me, or maybe I had a friend who did this, or but I don't really know until I start doing it, right? I don't know until I actually start going down that road. And so what a lot of us end up doing, or at least what a lot of people end up doing, is settling or making some kind of compromise. And we all have to make compromises in life, but this is kind of a central compromise of saying, okay, I'm going to either choose between work that I really love or a life that I love, and the job is going to be just kind of a means to an end, but I'm not going to be able to kind of do both things, right? I'm either going to have the job as a means to an end, or I'm going to pursue something I love, but I'm going to be poor, et cetera. And that's not really the goal, right? And I mean, obviously, Googlers, interested in self-improvement, interested in continuous improvement. The goal is essentially to have both, your money and your life, and also one more thing that I'll tell you about in a moment. But first, I talked about this nonlinear journey that I went on. And over the past 3 years, I've been looking at people from all different walks of life who have found or created what they call their dream job. And I kind of wanted to extract, okay, what are the commonalities of these people? Because they're very different in some ways. We did this comprehensive research study. We looked at men and women, different backgrounds, different ages, different kinds of careers. What do they have in common? And one thing I saw almost immediately is that almost none of them follow a linear path. Almost all of them have this kind of long and winding road. Almost all of them go down different paths. And then they aren't afraid, this is a key point, they aren't afraid to kind of go down a path for a while and take a step back and say, actually, I thought this was good, but I'm going to actually do something different, right? So there's this old poem about the road not taken by Robert Frost, how two roads diverge in a wood, and the traveler has to make a choice. Do I go down this road? Do I go down that one? And in that poem, he says, I chose the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And so one way to think of that is, okay, he chose the right road, right? That road made all the difference, that choice. But what we don't know is what was down the other road, right? What was the other path? What was that story? And maybe that path was just as good. right? Maybe that path was even better. We just don't know because we don't know the other part of the story. So I saw that all these people who identified with this dream job concept, they talked about things like, I would go to work even if I didn't get paid for it. That's how much I believe in it. But thankfully, I do get paid for it, Hopefully, maybe some of you could say that same thing. But what I saw is that not only did they go down a lot of different paths, they also weren't afraid to make mistakes. And when they made mistakes, it wasn't just that the mistakes were okay. It wasn't that it just turned out all right. It was actually that the mistakes could be beneficial for them because they made decisions, like all of us do, with limited information. And as they went down different paths, and sometimes made mistakes, sometimes had experience, sometimes had success, all of these things gave them more information to make better decisions as they went along. So I thought that was interesting. One of the people I looked at in the book was a successful working actor. She had done a lot of regional theater across the country. She'd been on several TV shows, and then she kind of went down a winding road to make a career change. She said the acting was good, but she wanted something different. And I really like this quote. She said she was kind of going in search of something. She didn't really even know what it was, but she didn't find it through a eureka moment. It was a process of discovery, that led her to something that provided the autonomy that she craved. So it was a very values-based journey. It wasn't like, here's my goal, what do I need to do to make that happen? It was, here's my value, autonomy, freedom, independence. I want the ability to choose. And that kind of led her along the way. Lots of different twists and turns before she found something that she liked even better. So even though people want to do a lot of different things, different professions and vocations, most of us, if we're on this kind of course for a dream job, there are 3 qualities that every dream job has. This is true in entrepreneurship. This is true if you're working for a company, for people working in nonprofits. Everybody who's really successful, and when I say successful, I mean your own definition of success, like whatever success means to you, can mean different things to different people. But let's say purposeful, let's say fulfilled. They all have this quality of joy. They're doing something that they love to do. It's not quite like following your passion. It's doing something that you love, and it also integrates with other qualities. Second quality is what I mentioned before, money. Something that is financially viable, something that is sustainable. And the third quality is flow, or essentially something that you do really well, something that uses your skills in a unique way. The kind of work that you can really get lost in, the kind of work that makes you come alive, the kind of thing you do where you're like, okay, the hours kind of go by and I don't really see like where they went because I was so immersed in this thing, right? So I like what I do and it's sustainable and I'm actually doing something I'm really good at. And people who are successful, again, by your own definition, people who are purposeful, they work toward the intersection of all 3 of these qualities. They work to find not just one of them, not just 2, but actually all 3. And if we think about people who are really successful, maybe even some famous people, we can kind of look from the outside and say, okay, they're clearly doing what they were born to do. Like maybe there's more than one path. Maybe they could have done something different themselves, but they didn't, right? Beyonce could have been a dentist, right? Could have been an accountant. Roger Federer could have been a Swiss watchmaker or something else. And that might have been fine, right? But not necessarily the work they were born to do, not necessarily the pinnacle of a career or a whole industry where all of us can kind of look at them and say, clearly doing something that's amazing and fantastic and very fulfilling. And it's not just about celebrities. You can probably think of someone that you know. My editor, Talia Crone, is here from Crown Random House. She gave me this great example that we used in the book. She said, it's almost like when you run into somebody that you knew back in high school and you haven't kept up with them. So 5 years go by, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and you run into them and you hear what they're doing now. And you're like, that makes perfect sense. Like I can look back to them when they were teenagers or young or whatever, and I could see these traits that were in their life. And now I can see, of course, she became a doctor. Of course, he became an engineer. It makes perfect sense. Like that's totally the work that they were born to do. So they've worked closely to get close to the intersection of joy, money, and flow. And the second big lesson, second thing that kind of emerged through all the research is it's not just about the kind of profession we hold or the kind of vocation, what we actually do that leads to success and happiness. It's the working environment or the working conditions. It's actually how we do our work that is just as important as the content or the type of work. And this is really critical because almost all career-based education, almost all skill training focuses on vocation or on profession. Like, here is the ideal profession for you. When you're 6 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm going to identify professions. When you're going to go and study, I'm going to choose the field of study that leads to a certain profession. If you're a bit older, then you're going to take on a second act or a third act. You're going to do something different. You're always thinking in terms of professions. But what's just as important is to understand, okay, how do I do my ideal work? And how can I create the conditions that work best for me? So working conditions are things like how you like to spend your time, your ideal schedule, where you like to do your work, how you like to be rewarded, motivated, compensated. It's different for different people. How collaborative you are, how much you like to work with other people versus how much you like to work on your own. Pretty much all of us like to do some of both of those things, but the range is tremendous, right? Some people really want much more of a social structure. Some people really want much more independent time to kind of carve out and create something. So all these different factors that are working conditions that lead to the environment in which we do our best work or we don't, in which we feel supported or we don't. And the goal is to find the right kind of work in the right kind of working conditions, which is very individual. What we're looking for, right kind of work, right kind of working conditions. If you have a job that you believe in, good job, you like what you do, but the conditions are not good for you, you have a boss that's overly negative, you have a conflict with one of your colleagues, the schedule doesn't work for your needs, it's going to be stressful. It doesn't matter that it's a good job, you're going to be stressed in that situation. On the other hand, you could have really good working conditions. You could have the best possible environment. But if you're not actually doing something that you believe in, then you're going to be unfulfilled. Right? You're going to look and say, okay, I have like this good environment, but I'm not actually part of something that's bigger than myself. Like, I don't believe in this mission. It's fine for a while, but it's not actually really, making me feel purposeful. So the goal is right kind of work, right kind of working conditions, engaging content in good conditions. If you're trying to figure out, okay, what are my ideal working conditions? Then you can go to the website borntforthisbook.com. You can take a free quiz. You don't have to register or anything. You're going to answer 14 questions. And it's going to give you a very specific personality type along with some clear recommendations and strategies for you. This isn't going to tell you, to change your job. It's going to tell you how to adapt your working conditions and the kind of work, the kind of environment under which you'll thrive. Okay, so I said I'd give you 4 actions, 4 specific things you can do today, tomorrow, going forward. First thing is, we talked about this model of joy, money, and flow, the 3 qualities of any successful dream job, anyone who feels like they've won the career lottery. And as much as possible, wherever you can make decisions based on this model, big decisions, small decisions, the happier you will be. Now, I understand that not everybody, almost no one, has 100% autonomy over their time. Even if you're completely self-employed, you don't have 100% autonomy. But wherever you do have autonomy, wherever you can make choice, you think about this. You think about what I love to do, what is viable, and what I'm really good at. Here's a very simple thing. All of you can do this. I try to answer this question every day. At the end of the day, I take out my journal, or if you're not a journaling person, you can use a Post-it note. You probably do it digitally. And you answer this question: did today matter? And I believe when all of us do that, we're going to know the answer to that question. You answer it in your own way, based on your own evaluation, based on your own standard, what you think success to be. And I think if you look back, you'll be able to say, okay, today I actually made progress, on my goals. I got a little bit closer to that thing I'm working toward. I also was in good harmony with people. I invested in the relationships that are important to me. Good day, today mattered. Or you might look back and say, actually, today wasn't that great. Like, it started kind of poorly. There was some problem or some conflict. Then I was just behind. I was just responding to things all day. I didn't really create anything. Like, I was at work for all this time, but I don't actually know what I did. And all of us have bad days. Like, that happens. But the goal is a streak of days that matter. The goal is being able to say, like, over and over, yes, today mattered. Maybe it had some challenge. Maybe it had some problem. There was some obstacle. It wasn't perfect, but today mattered. And when we answer that question, we're going to begin to identify, like, over and over, what are the qualities that lead us to say, okay, today was a day that mattered. And we're going to do more and more of those things. What are the activities that gave me energy today? What are the activities that drained my energy? You know, how can I do more of those things wherever I do have a choice? Second recommendation that I've been talking with people about all over the country, and I'll be very careful in talking about it here, is I have seen over and over that wherever people are employed, even when they love their job, it can be tremendously empowering for them to have something on the side that they do, some kind of side business, some kind of additional project. Even if it's not something that is bringing in a tremendous amount of money, it can be disproportionately satisfying and disproportionately rewarding. I get emails all the time from people who say, I was never an entrepreneur, I don't even want to be an entrepreneur, I'm not sure that's my thing, but you know, I started this little project, or I made some arts and crafts and I sold them on Etsy, or I started this consulting thing that has nothing to do with my job, it's no conflict, I just do it on the weekend or something, but I signed my first client, you know, and it was fantastic, right? So in the book I have a number of stories about this. Some of them are like this guy Benny Shu from Jacksonville, Florida, who had started a bunch of different projects, and some of them kind of took off and some of them didn't, which is totally normal. But eventually he had a project designing t-shirts and selling them through online ads on Google and Facebook. And within a year he was earning more money from that side business than he was in his day job as an app developer. So in his case, he did quit his job and go kind of full into that project. I also hear from people who have a side hustle and kind of, you know, build that out and it becomes successful. And then they have to make a choice. Okay, like, do I do that or do I kind of remain with my job? And sometimes people choose to stay with their job. And they say, actually, like, you know, I like the side project, but you know, the kind of work that I'm doing in my job is very different, and I have a different environment, and I'm working with people I like, and I want to keep doing that. And I think that's a great place to be as well, because when you have the other thing and it's going well, you don't have to go to work. You're going to work every day because you want to go to work, right? Not because you have to. And I think that's an ideal situation, not just for an employee, but also for an employer, to have their people coming to work because they want to be there, because they believe in the value of the mission. People often talk about, how do I find the time to do this? And what I always say, you know, to people when I'm speaking to other audiences is, well, we're all busy. Like, everybody has lots of commitments. But you know, when you're busy, in some cases that can be a benefit because you have limited time. You have to make that time count. You don't have 40, 50 hours, you know, open to you. You can't be on 12 different social networks. You can't, you know, start a whole bunch of different things. You got to focus on the things that matter. And there's some more information on that if you go to the website and register the book. Third recommendation, if you already know, like, I am an expert in this one thing, and I am a specialized expert, I know more about this than anybody else, that's great, that's wonderful. But a lot of people, even in companies, even in technical careers, feel this pressure to know what that thing is. And they don't always know because they haven't gone down enough roads. They don't have enough experience. And maybe even if they've gone down roads, maybe there's something else out there. So you don't have to choose a niche. And I've seen lots of successful people who've been able to kind of craft a career in more than one interest. And sometimes they're focused, and sometimes they've actually been able to choose a direction and combine 2 or 3 different things. We can look at some celebrities again, just briefly. Richard Branson started more than 80 different companies across a range of industries. Record label, airline, soda company, cosmetics, fashion, newspapers, magazine. His first business was actually selling Christmas trees. I don't know how many people knew that, probably no one, because it wasn't successful. It's kind of a seasonal business. But all these different businesses weren't really linked, you know, by industry at least. It was a very values-guided business, just like Laura's approach, you know, to finding her ideal career was a values-based journey. Oprah has influenced millions of people all over the world and has been a leader in media, entertainment, but also business, spirituality, wellness, self-care, all kinds of different things, right? She's very good at what she does, but it wasn't just one thing. She kind of honed a career around multiple interests and multiple focuses. And so you too, just as we said earlier, you can probably think of someone else that you know. It's not just about celebrities or famous people. You can probably think of someone that you know who has been able to be successful without focusing on one, you know, hyper-specialized, focused thing. So you don't have to choose a niche. And here's my last recommendation. If something isn't working in your life or your work, I think you should stop doing it. And we are told over and over in this entrepreneurial age that we live in, which has lots of good qualities in it. But in particular, the Western mindset of manifest destiny and pioneering has this belief that winners never quit. And what I saw through all my research and talking with lots of different people is that winners quit all the time. Winners aren't afraid to walk away from something. Winners aren't afraid to say, like, actually, I went down this path, and it wasn't the right path. Or maybe it was the right path for a time, but now I want something different, right? I'm gonna change it up. So part of the conventional wisdom, especially in terms of careers and business education, conventional wisdom, you've probably heard this, is that persistence is the most important predictor of success. And I don't think that's true. I think that flexibility and adaptation are the most important predictors of success. Being willing to kind of change it up. So here's one story to illustrate this. This is a story called 3 Feet from Gold. In the 1851 California gold rush, a prospector moves across the country and buys a small plot of land. And every day, for weeks, months, years, some long period of time, he's panning for gold. And he's unsuccessful, right? Every day, no gold, kind of running out his life savings. So finally, one day, he sells the plot of land to somebody else for a small amount of money. And the very next day after that, the new guy strikes gold, just 3 feet from where the first guy gave up. So the way this story is always told, the lesson is, first guy gave up too soon. If only he had kept going, right? And this story, or even this myth, is kind of perpetrated in all kinds of success stories that we hear about someone who fails 10 times, 25 times, et cetera, only to succeed on the 26th time. So the lesson is first guy shouldn't have given up. Even back in 1851, this was a popular meme on Snapchat, getting lots of views. Everybody was like, first guy just shouldn't have abandoned ship. But just like we don't know what would have happened down that other path that we started with in the beginning, we don't know what happened with the first prospector. First of all, there was no guarantee he was going to strike it rich. It's actually quite likely that he wouldn't, because he had done it over and over. He was doing the same thing. He wasn't getting different results. And secondly, we don't know what he did after that, after he sold the plot of land. Maybe he went on to a better life. Maybe he found a different path. Maybe he started a shovel selling business for all the other prospectors who were heading west. And so I don't think you should give up on your life dream. I don't think you should give up on your ultimate vision. But I think the best lesson is, you should always keep trying, but you should try again in a different way. And you shouldn't try the same thing. And if something isn't working, then don't be afraid to give up. How many of you have bought a lottery ticket in the past few months, let's say, past 3 months? Andrew, why did you buy the lottery ticket?
Because the jackpot was like $1 billion.
Because the jackpot was like $1 billion. That's right. Why did you buy your lottery? Because you wanted to be rich. Right. Okay. You said that earlier. Did it work out?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other reason for buying a lottery ticket that I haven't covered? Is there anyone here who bought the lottery ticket expecting to win? Like that was you're putting all your hopes and dreams on that? Probably not. So there's this belief, another conventional belief, is that playing the lottery is not rational, right? And I think investing in your life savings in playing the lottery is not rational, for sure. But most of us, when we buy the Powerball ticket, for a small amount of money, we don't really expect to win. We're not crushed when it doesn't happen. We're investing in a dream. We're spending a few dollars to have this little fantasy of what would life be like, if I won the $1 billion or whatever it was. And then it's okay, we kind of go on. So the thing about the lottery is not hackable. There's nothing we can do. There's no tips. There's no tricks. Nothing we can do to increase our odds. It's a completely randomized game. But the career lottery is hackable. There are things we can do. There are strategies we can learn. There are things that we can adopt. There's actions that we can take that will improve our odds. That will kind of increase our chances of success as we choose it. That will help us find better working conditions. That will help us have more joy, more money, and more flow in our life. So there's this Steve Jobs quote that some of you probably have heard in thinking about life purpose and thinking about the work that you were born to do. He said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. you can only connect them looking backward. And you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And I like that quote, but I think it's not just about trusting. It's not just about being a passive observer in this process. It's about taking strategic action. It's about understanding, okay, like how can I find joy, money, and flow in my life? You know, how can I have more days that matter? How can I build out that streak in my life? What are the ideal working conditions? You know, for me, how can I do my best work? How can I create more security for myself so that I can be a better employee, but also continue to invest in myself for the future, because no one will ever care about my career more than I will. How can I truly understand, okay, what is this thing out there? And there's more than one path, but how can I go down different paths? You know, how can I do that? And so it's not just about passively observing, it's about making active decisions and building a bridge from one dot to another. So we talked about joy, money, flow. Talked about how I think everyone should learn to think entrepreneurially, even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur. That's the whole concept of the side hustle, creating more confidence and security. If you are a specialized expert in something, which probably some of you here are, that's wonderful. But if you're good at a few different things, that's also okay. And people can be successful in more than one way. And if something isn't working, then I think you should stop doing it. So I am super happy and honored, excited to come back to Google for my 4th visit. I look forward to going to the other 64, 66 locations that you mentioned. And if you remember only one thing from this time that we've shared, you might remember that there's a very high percentage of pilots here in this audience, or at least aspirational pilots. You might remember that the lottery is not hackable, the career lottery is. But I would say if you can only remember one thing, remember that it's okay to make mistakes. And not just is it okay to make mistakes, but the mistakes can actually inform our thinking. The mistakes can be beneficial. They can help us to make better decisions, you know, as we go down different paths. So making active choices is almost always a good decision, even if we make the wrong choice. So if there is one thing that you are meant to do or born to do, I hope that you do everything you can to find that, or discover it, or create it, and bring it into light, make it happen for yourself. And I hope you win the lottery. Thank you, Google.
If anybody has any questions, I'll bring around the mic.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for being here. My name is Bilal. You mentioned the word success, and you said it means different things to different people. I'm curious that you've obviously described what success kind of is to you with the 3 parts to that. But what are some people, if you're thinking of the word success, who are some people that you think of, and why do you think they're successful? And what makes them successful outside of just those 3 things, or it could be those 3 things?
Sure, sure. I mean, I think those are descriptors, you know, of success. Those are qualities. You know, those aren't necessarily like this is what success is, right? So I guess I think for myself and what I see in a lot of other people, and perhaps some people will relate to this, maybe not everyone, but I think of success as continuously improving your circumstances, right? Like we're all on a journey, and we've all had circumstance and luck and fortune in some ways that have led us to where we are. We've all had privilege that has affected our lives and given us opportunities that others don't have. But yet we've also kind of made choices as well. And so, you know, when I look at people that have influenced me or people like in my community, I guess what I see is they're striving, essentially. And the previous book, you know, that you mentioned, The Happiness of Pursuit, it was very much about striving. It was about looking at this concept of going on a quest, whether a physical quest like I did with the going to every country, or lots of people that did other kinds of quests, academic quests, you know, different kinds of things, explorations, and there was this quality of striving in it. There was this quality of like, here is this thing I'm reaching toward, it's bigger than me, it's going to require something of me, I'm going to be changed through it, and so I think that is an important factor.
And is there any person that you can think of that you think embodies that as well? I know you've mentioned a few.
Sure. You know, I don't think of a lot of, like I mentioned a couple of celebrities, all right? But I try to be really careful in the books and all my work. For the most part, I actually don't look at celebrities. I don't look at famous people. I can't say here are 5 people that I think are successful, because what I'm trying to do is look at a lot of different people, you know, representative of the population. And so that if you read the book, you're able to say, okay, maybe I don't identify with this person's story, but I identify with this one, right? I'm not just reading the author's story. I'm not just reading some famous person. I'm reading like all these different people. So I don't really think of one person. I think of a lot of people. But thank you.
Hi, Chris. My name is Michelle.
Hey.
So amongst all the people that you've spoken to throughout your career and researching this book, lots of creative people, they've, gone down different paths and then pivoted. I'm interested to know about the value of intuition in people's decision-making or your own.
Sure.
Any insights you can offer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like maybe you have some insight or opinion of your own to share as well. So I do very much believe in the value of intuition or gut thinking, and I think it comes in particular use when we come to these choices of like, okay, I could go left or right, and maybe I've already done this analysis. Like I've done as much like fact-based, objective-based analysis as I could, and I still can't decide. That's why I think it's helpful to ask things like, what gives you energy? What drains your energy? It sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's not. It's a very practical question. You can really look and identify, okay, I did this, this is how it makes me feel. If you come to that choice, that question itself, how does this make me feel? If I think about this, and you have to kind of separate, the positive and negative qualities of those things, because it might say, this choice, I'm actually kind of afraid of it. But that could be a good thing, right? It can be like, I'm afraid of it because it sounds so big, it sounds so challenging. When I thought about the travel quest, I didn't begin that travel quest at country number 2. I had been traveling for a long time. I loved traveling. I lived in Africa. And after I'd been to like 70 countries, it was like, what if I try to go to every country in the world? Wow, that really scares me. But I'm also kind of drawn to it. And so I feel like that's where intuition comes in. It may not give you all the answers, but as you kind of come close to things, then it can guide you a little bit. And I think I saw that from the people that I looked at in the book as well. There was a woman in Mississauga, Ontario, who became the first female firefighter in Ontario 23 years ago. And obviously at the time that felt like kind of an exclusionary field. She was also very short in stature, so she was kind of the opposite of what you would think as a stereotypical firefighter. But she had this vision, and she's like, I really want to do it. And so she decoded the process. And so then she went into like this logical pursuit of it, like what do I need to achieve? What are the licenses? What are the trainings? What are the skills? But before she did that, it was kind of an intuition-based decision. Like, I like that. That sounds crazy. I want to do it.
Hi there.
Hey.
Just sort of curious about your country quest. Did you literally go to every country, including, say, North Korea?
I literally went to every country. It was an 11-year journey. I wasn't traveling continuously for 11 years, but it was this 11-year pursuit. It was a process of decoding and figuring out, okay, what are the challenges? North Korea is actually not one of the most difficult countries to go to. People think of North Korea and Cuba and places like that. Well, Cuba is easy now, but it wasn't until a few years ago for Americans. The countries that I had the more challenges with were more visa issues. Countries like Sudan, like Yemen, a couple of other African countries. I got deported when I went to Eritrea, so I don't have a desire to go back there. But most places I went, it was totally fine. I had a wonderful experience. It was a transformative act. And people sometimes ask, like, how much time do I spend in each country? I lived in Liberia for a year. I lived in the Philippines for 2 years. Some places I would be for a month, some places a couple of weeks. And there were some countries that were relatively brief, 1 or 2 days or something. And I don't pretend to be an expert on, the entire world or something. For me, I was interested in the quest. I was interested in the act of what is it like to kind of pursue this dream and follow it logically. Thanks.
Chris, I have a question. Some of us have people in our lives that we could see could benefit from something like this, like kind of going through this exercise, but they may not have like the self-awareness to know that they necessarily need it.
Mm-hmm.
And just curious, like where and how you've probably come across people like that you might want to nudge. How would you kind of go about doing that?
I think it's very hard to do that. I think it's very hard to say to someone, hey, you need this thing, right? So I guess, maybe there's a way to do it. I would just say, me personally, I'm not in the business of being an evangelist. I'm not like a door-to-door salesman. You know, like you can be a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman or saleswoman and eventually succeed. If you knock on enough doors, someone's going to buy that vacuum cleaner. But how much rejection are you going to go through, you know, along the way? So personally, I'm much more of a recruiter. I'm like, here are these ideas. You know, people kind of come to them when they're ready. So sometimes, like I do these book signings, and you know, parents often come to me and say, like, you know, my son or my daughter really needs to read this book, so I'm going to give it to them so they read it. And I'm like, I'm not sure how that's going to work. You know, I'm not sure how that's going to go. Maybe one helpful thing is you use the word nudge, so that's good. Maybe it's like, you know, how can you be a role model without being a role model? How can you be a mentor without being a mentor? You know, how can you help people see what's possible? That's a good thing. Help people see there's an opportunity, there's a possibility, there is more to life, there is this, you know, available to you. But it's here for you when you're ready, right? There are tools and resources when you're ready. I think that's, and then they come to it when they want to.
I think we've got time for one more question. If there's one last desire. Anybody?
You mentioned briefly a 14-question questionnaire, which
Yes.
you fill it out and that gives you. What's the basis for it? What do you base it on? Is it
Sure.
Myers-Briggs? Is it any kind of personality test? Like
No, it's not based on Myers-Briggs. It's based on all the work that we did for the book. I did it here with Talia, my editor. So we had spent a long period of time with all of the interviews, and then you know I start from a very large pool of people with some introductory interviews and surveys. Then I choose like a smaller circle and do more detailed interviews and surveys. And then for the people who are actually in the book, at that point I'm kind of choosing representative stories, right, to ensure it's diverse, to ensure there's hitting different points. So as for the quiz itself, you know, as we learned things about working conditions, you know, as we developed this model of joy, money, flow, as we developed other exercises in the book, there's a number of them. That's kind of how the quiz came to be. And we then designed personality types based on all the research we had done that said, okay, if you like to work in this manner, then here's the ideal working environment for you. And again, you may not have 100% autonomy. You can't choose everything, but you should be aware that this is who you are. You should be aware that whenever you can create this kind of environment, then you'll thrive in that. So if you take the quiz, let me know if you like it or if you don't.
so original research.
Original research, yes. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's give another round of applause to Chris.
Thank you.